My name is Delise Weir. I am on the board of the Friends of the UCSC Farm and Garden. You are at the UCSC Farm and Garden, also known as the Center for Agroecology, and they do wonderful work in the world, and we're here to support them. And this is a Mac, and I'm a PC user. Okay, I got it. Right. The first thing I want to do is acknowledge that we are on land that is not really ours. So this is originally land from the unceded land from the Amamutsan tribal band. Sorry, we're having more technical difficulties. And as they were good stewards of the land, we want to be good stewards of the land. So we like to acknowledge that up front in every event. For the Zoom participants, we're going to do a little housekeeping. We ask that you keep your microphone muted and your video off, which I believe, because this is a webinar, you have to do anyway. That's not an option. Speaker view is recommended for you. Use the chat window or the Q&A function for any questions. We'll hold the questions till the end, and then we'll do a Q&A session, and your questions will be read back to the instructor. And there is a live script button at the bottom of your screen that should give you closed captioning so that you can read the words as well as see them. For technical assistance, that's not a question mark. Jimena is your person for any questions, so you can contact her directly. She's one of the panelists. And after class, we're going to send this presentation and a link to the video to everybody in the room and on the Zoom. So that's where all the recipes are. That's going to be fun. If you aren't already a member of the Friends of the Farm and Garden, it would be very good if you joined. If you like what happens today and you like what we do as a support group, that's wonderful and a good reason to join. But really the main reason to join is because our existence is to support the Center for Agroecology, and they're doing incredible work. They have new funding this year. They have new staffing this year. I'll later introduce Jimena. Come here for 1 second. I'd like to introduce Jimena because she's a very important person who just started working here. Come on screen, girl.
Hi everyone. My name is Jimena. I'm the new agroecology program specialist. As part of my role, I support a lot of what the Friends of the Farm and Garden do, and I'm really excited to get to know you all and to do some fun events together. So yay, welcome.
So we've been bootstrapping this since COVID, and now we have Jimena, and that's wonderful. Lots of new people are coming on board. So the best way to find out what's going on at the farm is by joining the Friends and getting our newsletter. You also get great discounts at garden centers if you're a gardener. I assume you are because you are taking a class in libations from the garden. And we have special events just for you. So hope you can join. And now I'm going to turn it over to the lovely and talented Paula Grainger.
Hi, everybody, both in the hall in this beautiful hay barn today and also at home on Zoom. There's a little bit about me here. I'm a herbalist, or as I'm learning to say in this country, an herbalist. And I graduated from the University of Westminster almost 20 years ago now with a degree in herbal medicine. I practice as a clinical herbalist, and I also teach and write about medicinal herbs. I've got 2 books, one of which is called Adaptations and one's called Infuse. I also grow and make a lot of my own herbal medicines here in Santa Cruz. I love to teach. I teach other classes as well, and I teach all kinds of things to do with herbal medicine. So today, it's a bit less sort of herbal medicine-y and a bit more seasonal. You can't hear me? Okay, let me get that a little bit closer. Is that better? Yes. Okay, good. Yeah, do let me know if you can't hear me. It seems to be cutting in and out a little bit. Is that seeming like it to you? Hello? 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 Okay.
Sorry for that.
Okay, I might just pick it up and be like a rock star.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're going to do something that is seasonal and a lot of fun, and something I do for my friends and my family, and sometimes I've sold them too. And that is to make herbal and garden-based and plant-based ingredients that you can use in mocktails and cocktails. So we're going to do herbal and fruit alcohol and herbal. We're going to do syrups and cordials. We're going to do herbal and fruit alcohol infusions. We're going to do bitters, cordials, and elixirs. We're also going to do shrubs, which are a lot of fun. We're going to talk a little bit about salts and garnishes and ways that you can make your cocktails and mocktails look particularly gorgeous. And we'll talk a little bit about how to use them, and there's some recipes as well. And as Denise said, you'll get this presentation sent to you via email. So I won't go through all the recipes at the end, but you'll have them all there, and you'll see some of them are duplicated because we've just put them all together at the end so you can find them easily. So equipment. I'm just going to see what would happen if I did. Would that help better? Okay. Okay. I should probably throw that thing across the stage or something. Okay, so equipment, mason jars with lids. You're all Santa Cruzans, so you have a large supply of mason jars. It's something I've learned about California. Also straining, nut milk bag or coffee filters are really good things to have. And it's really important to strain things well for two reasons. One, because if there's plant material left in there, it will tend to be more likely to decay and to go off. So you want a good shelf life for the things you're making. And the other reason is that it just looks pretty. You get a nice clear, and some of the herbs and spices, and particularly flowers you're using, are going to have nice colors. So you kind of want to be able to see that, and you want a nice clear thing. So I use a nut milk bag. Coffee filter works too, as long as you're not too chunky stuff. And if you want it to be nice and clear, don't squeeze too much. It's always that push me, pull you between wanting to get as much out of it as possible. But if you squeeze a lot, you're going to get more of that kind of plant material. You're wanting a sieve, you'll want bottles to put things in. Something we haven't put on here that's critical is labels. Label everything. You'll think you'll remember, but you won't, honestly. A dehydrator is awesome. It's an expensive bit of kit, so not everybody has it. And you can dehydrate using the lowest setting on your oven, or just very simply with things that aren't too woody or too moist, like roots and things. If you just hang things upside down in a paper bag, in a cool, warm, dry place, then that will dry pretty well too. And a spice grinder is kind of handy. And then your ingredients, you're looking at fruit, aromatic herbs, vodka or other alcohol, if you're going to make alcoholic tinctures or alcoholic preparations, sugar, honey, other sweeteners, vinegar, and we'll talk a bit more about what type, and then sea or kosher salt. So let's talk about syrups. Syrups are kind of the basis of all of this, I would say. If you know how to make good syrups, then there's all kinds of things that you can do with that. And they capture and preserve both the color and the flavor of your other ingredients. And they typically use sugar to preserve it. They can also be made with honey, maple syrup, things like that. Bear in mind, if you're doing that, it's going to slightly change the flavor, because both of those have a distinctive flavor of their own, which sometimes is a great benefit. And also will change the color. So again, you're going to get a slight change in your color there. Think about complementary flavor pairings, and we'll talk a bit more about that later on, but think about what goes with what. And syrups typically will keep pretty well in the refrigerator for weeks or even months. If it's a super saturated syrup, in other words, if it's at least as much sugar as there is other liquid, then it should be shelf stable without having to put it into the refrigerator. But particularly if you're giving it to someone else, I would always recommend that they put it in the fridge. And you'll see if they're there too long, you'll get little bubbles and they'll start to ferment. At which point you can throw them away, or you can go, oh, I made it ferment, and keep going with it like that. So yeah, and they're a great basis for lots of other things that you can make. So I'm going to give you 3 methods to make a syrup. There's actually quite a few different ways of doing this, and a lot depends on what you're making a syrup out of. So if you're making something out of delicate aromatic herbs and spices, if you cook them or heat them too much, you're going to lose a lot of that delicate We're talking things like lemon balm, thyme, you know, those very fragrant herbs, rose petals, things like that. So the way to do this is to make a simple syrup, and you do that by just heating gently 1 part sugar with 1 part water. I like to use filtered water for obvious reasons, but you don't have to. And then just heat that very gently and swirling it around gently until all the sugar dissolves and it goes clear. You'll look at it and think, oh my gosh, it's going to burn. There's not enough water in there, but believe me, there is when sugar starts to heat and dissolve. At that point, you take it off the heat, add your lightly crushed herbs or spices, delicate ones, into the hot syrup, cover it, and let it sit until it's completely cool. And you'll find that that is enough, that heat is enough to draw out that gorgeous sort of essential oils, aromatics that you want from the plants or herbs. And then you can simply strain it in the way I described earlier, label it, and refrigerate it. And that's a very nice and simple way to make a syrup. If you're using something, so this method is for those people when you're using something that is more woody or more denser, so things like seeds and things like that would work well here, and also kind of roots. So for example, if you're using something like licorice, which you're probably not growing in your garden, but it's a nice thing to add into things, you need to give it some heat to get the flavor to come out. So what you're doing here is basically making a decocted syrup. So you're going to put all the ingredients in a pan with water just to cover it, bring it almost up to boiling, cover it, lower the heat, and then simmer till it's soft. And this is particularly important. This works particularly well with fruits. So if you're doing a spiced apple, or if you're doing berries or peaches or all the other incredible fruit that's around. So you don't want to overcook it here. And if you've got any green material in there, put that in towards the end, because you don't want it to taste like cabbage. You know, when you're using green leafy herbs, and you don't want too much of the chlorophyll to come out, you just want the fragrance to come out. So you're going to do this until the fruit is soft, let it cool, strain it as discussed, and then very gently warm it up again and add an equal volume of sugar or honey or whatever you're using. So basically you're cooking it, you're straining it off, so you've got a nice clear liquid decoction, and then you're adding an equal volume of sugar, gently warming it, so not too hot because you don't want to kind of get rid of all those flavors, and that will give you a lovely syrup, which you can then bottle, label, and refrigerate. And if you wanted to add in aromatics at that point, you could do it like this, and then when you've got that hot syrup, then add in your aromatics. So I make the licorice and thyme syrup, which is more medicinal and kind of fun, but I will make the licorice decoction, then I'll add the thyme when I've strained it off and when I've gently heated it and I've got that warm syrup. And then the last one I wanted to give you as an option for a way of making syrups is for flowers. Flowers are super delicate for the most part. So a nice way you can make a beautiful syrup from flowers is you're just going to mix your flowers into the sugar and give them 24 hours. So if you've ever done like lavender sugar for baking, similar kind of idea. And then you're going to, excuse me, then you're going to transfer it to a pan, add an equal volume of water, very gently heat it again, and really super gently, just until that's clarified. And then you can strain, bottle, label, and refrigerate. And you'll leave it off the heat to cool again, which will infuse it nicely. So you've got your beautiful syrups that you've made, which are gorgeous different colors from all the fruits and herbs and fragrances that you've used in there. Here are a few ways that you can use the syrups. So the simplest is just to mix it with some sparkling water or even still water. I normally go about 1 to 5, but it's going to depend on how flavorful and how strong the herbs or spices you were that you used in your syrup. So that's a really nice way to do it. You can also add a teaspoon of the syrup to a glass of Prosecco or sparkling wine, and that makes a really beautiful cocktail. I love to do this with rose. It's really gorgeous. And of course, you can garnish it with a little bit of whatever plant you've used as well, which looks really pretty. Another nice thing to do, and I see this done more in the UK actually than here, is to add it to hot water.
and make a kind of hot tea or drink. And this is really nice, particularly Delise has made all these incredible preparations for you to try later. Sorry, people on Zoom that you're not here to try them, but hopefully you'll make your own. And she's made a gorgeous sort of spiced elderberry syrup, and that is amazing. Of course, elderberry is a good antiviral and very helpful for colds and flu and things. So that with hot water, maybe a cinnamon stick in there as well as a slice of lemon, is a really nice comforting drink when you're kind of a bit under the weather. And then of course you can also just use your syrup in place of the syrup portion in all different kinds of classic recipes. So you've got, the sky's the limit here. I mean, everyone in this room could make 5 syrups this week, and we could all come back next Saturday, maybe we should, and taste them, and they would all be different. You know, it's a really unique thing, and that's why they're such a lovely gift and so nice to kind of share with your friends and family over the holiday season. So next we're going to talk about alcohol infusions. I'm just going to have a sip of water. So alcohol is, without getting too sciencey on it, alcohol is really handy for extracting the flavors and the elements and the constituents in plants which aren't easily extracted by water. Heat helps to do that, of course, when you're making a water thing like a simple syrup. But alcohol pulls out more of those kind of those constituents. So not only does it take out the aroma and the flavor and capture it, it's also a really good preservative. So if you're making something with alcohol, you don't need to refrigerate it. As long as, and again, without getting too technical here, it needs to be about 25% alcohol. I use vodka. Most people do. I think sometimes people will use something like Everclear, which is a sort of Polish spirit, which is a stronger alcohol. I think particularly if you're making these for like pleasure, it's too strong, you know. It doesn't taste good to me, so I just use vodka. And the time to infuse, it really varies, 1 to 2 days. You know, use what you've got in the way of senses. Use your smell and your sense of taste. You can open it every day, have a little taste, have a little sniff, and see how it's coming on. Effectively, what you're making when you do this is a tincture. You can use dried or fresh ingredients, it's up to you. Fruits, whatever you want to use. But really what you're making is a tincture, and that's what I use a lot of the time as a clinical herbalist to, you know, help people get well. Because they're very easy to take as long as people are comfortable with alcohol. And something people don't always know is that gin is actually an infused vodka. So gin was started back in Holland in, I don't know, 1500s or something, as a medicinal preparation, as a lot of things were. With putting juniper berries into vodka and making flavored drinks that really were medicinal to start with, but have ended up being very popular. And of course, you don't have to use vodka. You can use other things as well, like fruits go really well with brandy. You can use rum for kind of more exotic flavored fruits. You can use whiskey and ginger. Yummy. So there's all kinds of different spirits you can use. So it's also quite a good way to use up things that you bought and never quite got around to drinking. If that's true of anyone here, I don't know if it is. So to make an alcohol infusion, what you're basically going to do is you're going to chop up your fresh herbs, fruits, spices, whatever it is. If you've got fresh flowers or dried herbs, they don't really need to be chopped. Put it into a jar with enough of whatever alcohol you've chosen to do this with, and cover it. And you're going to want to make sure there's an inch or so of clearance at the top. Because if you've got plant material sticking out, then that's in danger of kind of going off because it's being exposed to the air. You need to have it submerged under the alcohol. And if you've got something that's particularly springy and bouncy, often it will kind of settle as it saturates. But if it doesn't, you could use, you can buy little kind of glass weights that go in. They're often used for fermenting. Or you can get a suitable stone from the garden, boil it, or put it through the dishwasher and sterilize, and then just pop that in the top. But if you do that, be aware that what you want to do with these alcohol infusions is shake the bottle, invert it a few times every day. Don't forget that you've got a rock in there and smash the glass, because that's really annoying. just lift it out and do that. And then, as I said, between 1 and 2 weeks to infuse that, depending on what you've got in there. And then guess what? You strain, label, and you do not need to refrigerate. So cordials, cordial in the UK is often not with alcohol, but here in the US we tend to use that phrase more with alcohol. So I'm calling them cordials, also called liqueurs, are basically a sweetened alcohol infusion. So it's a combination of the two there. So you can make that very easily by just adding about half the volume of alcohol or to taste to your alcohol infusion when you're making it. So you're going to put your fruit or herbs or whatever it is into the jar. You're going to add enough alcohol just to cover it, and then half that much sugar. Or you can combine a syrup with an alcohol infusion. So if you've already made some syrups and you've made some alcohol infusions, you can add them together and you can make cordials that way. So you might, for example, have an elderberry syrup and add a cinnamon alcohol infusion or something like that. Might be nice. And then elixirs, which I love that word, are sweetened with honey. And you're going to add that during the infusing process. And I've got a little recipe for an elixir later coming up, and there it is. So this is something I love to make. So this is Rose elixir recipe. It's a good gift at any time of year, particularly appropriate for Valentine's, of course, because roses are all about love. And you're going to take 3 loose handfuls from your fresh rose petals from your most fragrant rose. And think about color here as well. If you've got a deep colored rose, that's going to infuse the color into your preparation as well and make it very beautiful. Half a cup of raw local honey, ideally, or any honey you can get hold of. But certainly for people around this area, we have an abundance of really gorgeous local honey. And a cup of brandy. You're going to add all those together, stir them to combine, and then keep the jar somewhere cool and dark. If you want it to be particularly pink, you're going to want to use vodka rather than brandy, because brandy is darker, but brandy has a kind of richness to it that's quite nice. Infuse it for 3 days to a week. You really don't need a very long infusion on this. It's probably going to be done after 3 days, maybe even a bit earlier. Keep smelling and tasting. And then you're going to strain, bottle, and label. And no need to refrigerate again, because you've got the alcohol in there. Likewise, there's one here for spruce tip liqueur, which is a lovely thing to do. You can do it with Douglas fir tips. You can do it with redwood tips, which we are not short of around these parts. So, as ever, if you're wild crafting, really know what you're picking. My contact details will be later. I never mind if people send me a picture and go, "Is this safe?" There's not a lot of things that are really not safe, but there are some things. So you do want to make sure you know what you're picking. There's also amazing resources online, and iNaturalist is a really good app for IDing things. So it's unfortunate that they're not around this time of year, because it's really nice to do something like this and make a kind of Christmas tree cocktail for the holidays. But if you think about it now, you can always pop out next spring, normally around April kind of time, and pick some spruce tips or Douglas fir tips or tips from the redwood. And there's a little recipe there. I won't talk you through it, but you get the idea. So basically, you're blending the sugar and the flavors, and then you're going to be putting those into in with the alcohol and allowing it to infuse. And we've got there, so that 96%. So that is another option. But as I say, I tend to prefer to do the vodka. But the reason that's there, that 96%, is that the fragrance in the evergreens is a resin, and that can be hard to dissolve into a lower alcohol. But I think this will work very well with 40%. And then how to use them? Well, the easiest way is just to replace your favorite alcohol with your fruit, herb, or spice-infused alcohol. So you might use a lemon-infused vodka, for example, in a cocktail, rather than using a regular vodka. And we've got that there in the lemon vodka and the lemon drop. But you can also do it as a secondary ingredient. So particularly where you've got stronger things, and particularly where you're dealing with bitters, which we'll talk about in a moment, it's really nice to just add a little dash or a teaspoon of that into a cocktail. And I put there the example of 2 teaspoonfuls of elderflower cordial in a classic gin and tonic, which is so gorgeous and springtimey and summery, gorgeous. So you've probably seen bitters on sale everywhere. They're really popular, and this comes out of a kind of tradition that's particularly active in Europe. So bitters are taken before meals to stimulate your appetite and also to help you digest your food effectively. I saw someone laugh there when I said stimulate your appetite. Not needed. But they do, you know, if you think about martini, if you think about Negroni, if you think about all those classic European bitters, and they really do help you to digest your food. I do this medicinally for people who struggle with digesting their food, is having bitters and then just taking a little bit before meals. And it just really helps because your taste buds are stimulated, and that produces saliva, and that sets off a train all the way down through your digestive system that's effectively doing what it needs to do. So basically, bitters are just an alcohol infusion, so you're doing it in exactly the same way as we just talked about for the alcohol infusion. And there's a ton of different herbs that you can use for this. Artichoke leaf. So typically what you'll do is you'll use bitters, and then you'll use some aromatics as well. Partly because it makes it taste nicer, partly because it makes it more of an interesting and richer ingredient in a cocktail, and also because you're stimulating your digestive system. So you kind of want to calm it at the same time, if that makes sense. So the classic aromatic would be orange peel. But some of the herbs that I've put here are artichoke leaf, which is really bitter. I don't know if anyone tasted an artichoke leaf. Bitter. if you haven't, and you've got one growing at home, and have a taste, just a little bit, because it really is very bitter. Rosemary is really quite bitter. So is lavender. You can use juniper berries, mugwort, very bitter, and grows all around. And then for the more aromatics, you're thinking about things like anise, coffee beans. I haven't put them all in the right order there. And also another bitter that you'll find growing around here, and I meant to pick it on the way in, is white walnut. That grows all over the university and is a really good bitter. It's also a good sort of chest herb. So I'll run out after we've done this, and I'll pick a bit to show you. Oregon grapefruit, chicory root. There's a ton of different bitter things that you can use. Typically, bitters are going to give up their bitter flavor faster than the aromatics. So you might want to do the aromatics first, and then add your bitters in later. So maybe aromatics in, then let it infuse for 3-4 days, then add in your bitters. Does that make sense? And as I said, you can add a tiny bit to cocktails or a drop of full in a glass of water, and just drink that before meals, and it will really help with your digestion. And then, of course, you want to make everything look real. Oh, sorry, hang on. Did I skip one? I don't know how to go back. I don't think I did. Okay. So shrubs. I love shrubs, and there's lots of really beautiful ones that Lise has made here for you to try today. They're really delicious. So it's a really useful thing to have for a mocktail, a shrub, because it's alcohol-free, but it has that kind of, because it's vinegar, it has that kind of sharpness to it. Because the problem with mocktails is they can end up being very sweet and tasting a bit kind of childish, and that's not always the flavor people want. So learning to make shrubs is really great. You can use all kinds of fruit for this. There's all kinds of different options that you can use. And you can put it into a cocktail in place of the citrus. It's got that sharpness. Often you'll put lemon juice into a cocktail. But the vinegar, it's got sweetness too with the sugar, but it's got that vinegar in it. So it's got that kind of sharpness and sourness, which is what you want in a lot of cocktails. And there's two pretty easy ways to do this. One is just to use equal proportions each of chopped fruit, sugar, and vinegar. And obviously any aromatics or flavors you've got in there too. So for example, you can pop in a vanilla bean or a cinnamon stick or a little handful of star anise. All those kind of lovely, rich, beautiful aromatic spices can go in there as well. Or, she shouted, if you want it to be a little bit more fruity, less vinegary, you can do 2 of the chopped fruit and then 1 each sugar and vinegar, not each of those. So you're going to mix that, shake it up, take the jar daily again, leave it on the counter. It's always good to have these things nearby so you remember to shake them and remember to kind of interact with them. So you're going to do that for a couple of days on the counter, and then day 3, put it in the fridge for 1 or 2 days. Again, you can taste as you go along just to see how the flavors are developing. And then you're going to filter that, label, bottle, and refrigerate. And they keep really well in the refrigerator because you've got the vinegar. Vinegar doesn't preserve as well as alcohol, but it does preserve pretty well. So it's got a longer shelf life than just a straightforward simple syrup would have. There we go. Another nice thing to do is to sort of add extra layers of flavor through flavored salts. And these are really super easy to make. Basically, you're going to choose what you want to do. It could just be one thing, like lemon. It could be a number of different things all together. And this works with vegetables as well. The lovely Denise has some amazing tomato powder or tomato powder to taste today. And you're going to dry them, and they're going to need to be completely dried. When you're drying vegetables, fruit, herbs, whatever, you need to make sure all the moisture is out. So it should snap, depending on what it is, it should snap or break or feel very dry to the touch when you're taking it out of the dehydrator or the oven. Obviously, this isn't going to work so well with hanging things up unless you're doing it with, leafy herbs like thyme, sage, basil, all that kind of thing would work really well. And then grind it up into a powder, and you can do that with a coffee grinder. If you're making a lot of this kind of thing, I think it's really helpful to have a coffee grinder that's set aside just for your herbal and culinary experiments rather than trying to use the one we use for coffee because you may not want your coffee to taste of whatever, the tomato, for example, or other way around. And then you just powder it up. You could also, of course, if you don't have a coffee grinder, do it in a pestle and mortar. And that's also a really good workout, and you don't have to go to the gym that way. Mix that together, and you can mix that in the proportion you like. You can get fancy here as well. You can use like that really beautiful pink Himalayan salt, all kinds of different salts that you can get, and you can mix those together, put it in a little airtight bottle or jar, and label it. And that's a really sweet gift. And of course, you can do this with sugar as well. There's no reason why you can't make a really nice kind of flavorful sugar. For example, a thyme sugar sprinkled on a lemon cake would be gorgeous. Or rosemary and orange, some really nice kind of flavor combinations. And then you can use these salts in cooking, of course, but also to salt the rim on a margarita or a Bloody Mary or something like that, or a Virgin Mary as well, would obviously work just as well. Really nice thing. And the tomato powder that Denise makes, she recommends for a Bloody Mary. I wish we could serve this today, but there's no alcohol. Yeah, so just a little mixology tip. We do taste with our eyes to a large degree. So think about the look as well as the flavor, and think about preserving those beautiful colors. I've done syrups before with hibiscus flowers, and you get the most unbelievable ruby red. It's absolutely beautiful. There's also, I don't know if you've come across it, but there's something called butterfly pea flowers. They've got them down at the herb room, or those of you online can get them online. And they give a, frankly, unrealistically bright looking blue, like a really, really powerful blue. So if you're making something that's pretty much clear otherwise, and you want to make it bright blue, you can do that with butterfly pea flower, just infuse it in the normal way. It's really cool. Yeah, there's all kinds of fun things you can do with making the colours interesting and pretty, and that's nice for kids as well. You know, you can make syrups that have got kind of nice colours for them. And next slide. Oh, there we go. And they make lovely gifts, all of these things. So, you know, just look out pretty bottles. Sometimes you can get really beautiful bottles in vintage shops. You can also, I hate to mention Amazon, but they do have an amazing selection of really nice bottles that you can buy online, and they make a really nice gift for people with a label and a bow. And it's nice as well if you want to add the recipe so people can make it for themselves. It's a really nice thing to do. And thinking about things that you can make in less than a month, which is how long it is from now until, well, no, it's 3 weeks now, really, until people are giving gifts. You know, syrups, shrubs, infused spirits, and salts can all be made in that time. So it's a good opportunity to kind of get out into the garden and see what's growing. And then for thinking about, thinking about how to make cocktails and mocktails, you're always looking for a balance. So as I said, particularly with mocktails, it can be very easy for things to end up being very sweet. So looking on the right there, the mocktails, if you use 4 parts of your base, you can use 1 part of sour, so that might be a shrub, it might be lemon juice, it might be a combination of both, and then a little half a part of sweet, because there's already some sweet probably in your base, and definitely in your shrub if you're using that. If you're using alcohol, it's easier for it not to be overly sweet, but you still want to add in 1 part of sour and 1 part of sweet. Obviously, there's tons of different cocktail recipes out there, and a million different ways to do things, and it's all according to taste. But I think it's useful to have a little basis for this. You know, you're aiming for a blend, so nothing is sort of overpowering everything else, and just keep it simple. And there's some ideas here for mocktails. So club soda, ginger ale, also ginger beer, of course. Sparkling water is always good. A lot of professional mixologists, I understand it, prefer to use like soda water or water from a soda siphon rather than mineral water, because the mineral water often has a bit of a flavor of its own. So they'd rather go with the kind of, you know, really clean flavor. Kombucha, fruit juice, coconut water, 0 proof alcohol substitute, tonic water, and tea. Don't forget tea, which is in itself a herbal infusion. And bear in mind, you can do that as well with mocktails. You know, you could make peppermint tea as a base. You could make all kinds of different herb teas, or a chamomile tea as a base would be really nice as well. And those, particularly things like chamomile, have a little bit of bitterness to them. So again, it gives you that kind of counteraction to the overly sweetness. And then thinking about the sweeteners, your shrub is both sweet and sour, maple syrup, agave, honey, date syrup, of course, and then either an infused or basic simple syrup. And then for your sour, you've got citrus, you've got your shrubs, but also things like vinegar in itself. You can use a little bit of vinegar without it necessarily being in the shrub, particularly if it's like balsamic or a really nice red or white wine. And don't forget sour fruits as well, so things like cranberry juice. It brings some sourness into it as well and has a slightly more sophisticated taste. And then of course your bitters, aromatic, citrus, herbal, you can make your bitters edge towards one of those flavor groups more. And we've got a couple of nice sample mocktail cocktails here, some mocktail recipes here. So that one on the left there, 1 ounce acid, so you've got your lemon juice, you've got ½ an ounce of sweet honey, you've got 4 ounce base of cold strong black tea, and then we've got a garnish with a lemon twist, and then coconut cooler, you've got your lemon juice, again for that sour, simple syrup, coconut water, which is lovely, and you could garnish that with a mint sprig. And then thinking more about kind of alcohol-based cocktails. So this is one I like, which is 1 ounce of whiskey, 1 ounce of ginger-infused brandy. And of course, you could also do this by, you know, it's all infinitely customizable. You could also just like use 2 ounces of whiskey-infused ginger. Ginger-infused whiskey. or ginger infused brandy for the 2 ounces. There's all different ways of doing it. But the traditional whiskey mac has obviously whiskey in it. 1 ounce of lemon juice, 1 ounce of elderberry syrup, and then garnishing that with lemon slice and ginger slice. And you could add a little hot water again to make a nice sort of steaming hot toddy type drink with that. And then this much sort of lighter, perhaps more summery, but also very nice for this time of year. 1/2 ounce of gin, 1/2 ounce of cranberry infused vodka, 2 ounces of sparkling rosé wine, 1/2 ounce of that rose elixir that we just made earlier on. And you can buy little dried rose buds to garnish with. If you are buying dried rose buds, they make a really nice garnish, but make sure you're buying them from a herb shop, not from like a potpourri type shop, because they can be covered with stuff. So yes, I've kind of raced through that. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions. We'll move on to questions if people would like to. Yeah. Oh yes, good point. I was going to do that. Lady here has just asked about vinegars. There are lots of different types of vinegar. What I would not use for a shrub or for anything I was going to drink is that really cheap white vinegar that you use in your laundry. It's not very nice. What I would use is apple cider vinegar. I really love apple cider vinegar because it's got all those additional benefits of fermentation. It's good for your digestion. It really supports a lot of good things in your body. But it does tend to get more vinegary tasting over time. So, and it has quite a powerful flavor all of its own. So I tend to use it more on the medicinal side, but for shrubs, I'd probably go for more of a red wine vinegar or a white wine. Balsamic is too strong and too rich for you could add a few drops just to give it that little flavor, but a red wine vinegar or a white wine vinegar, also a sherry vinegar. And also Chinese rice vinegar would be nice too. It's got that kind of slightly sharper taste, and that might be nice for more of a kind of savory type thing. So yeah, there's a lot of vodkas, a lot of vinegars out there that you can try. Yeah. Okay, great. I've got someone over there who's monitoring my Zoom questions. So I'll come to the people in the audience and then we'll move on to the Zoom. Thank you. Did I? Okay, let's see. Okay, I think I did, and I don't know how that happened. Let me try and get that. How do I get back from here? Sorry. And I can speak.
Tell me when I hit it.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, and that's when I was going to talk about the vinegars as well. So the easiest way to taste a shrub is just like in seltzer water or another base. So those are the bases we talked about there. But just in water, I often have it with plain water, but it's really nice with sparkling water. And I would use about 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. So like 1 part of the shrub to 4 or 5 parts of water, depending on taste. And of course, if you are not making a mocktail, you could also add Prosecco that's here as well. You can also put it in, as I say, if you're trying to adapt a kind of alcoholic cocktail to a mocktail, it gives that little bit of sourness. So shrubs can be really handy in that situation as well. Things like blackberry shrub are just amazing. So there's a few little flavor ideas here as well, and you know, vanilla and pear, apple spice, so cinnamon, a little bit of allspice, maybe a touch of nutmeg in there as well, would be gorgeous. Blackberry and lavender, fig, thyme, fig and thyme is gorgeous, ginger and lime, cranberry apple, and strawberry basil. Rhubarb as well. You may be growing it in your garden, but it's easy to buy here. And rhubarb makes an absolutely gorgeous shrub, and it also makes a really nice bitters actually, because rhubarb's got some bitterness to it. So that's a really nice thing to put into bitters as well. Yeah, I'm just going to flick forward to. Yeah, please.
I will.
So the question is there a benefit to mixing a simple syrup with the alcohol infusion at the end, as opposed to doing it while you're doing it? Is that right? Totally up to you. You can do both. Both are going to work really well. You probably get more of a blended taste if it's all done as one, and it's also you know, it's quicker and easier. So if you just want to make a thing and you know what your flavor combinations are going to be, then you can just do that. But the benefit of actually doing them as separate things is that gives you the opportunity to really be very intentional about your flavors. So if you've got a simple syrup that's infused with a fruit, say, and then you've got a spice or a herbal alcohol infusion, you can keep tasting and just getting it exactly how you want it to be. So, you know, as a herbalist, all of my alcohol infusions and tinctures are individual. And I blend them together according to what my client needs. It's like everything is customized. So, you know, there is definitely a benefit to having individual ones, but there's also a limit to most people's time and resources. So it's easier just to do it all in one thing. Yeah. I'm going to ask Denise because she put that in there, and I meant to ask her myself. Okay, so it's the fake alcohols that are out there. I mean, if you do that, bear in mind it doesn't have alcohol. So it's not going to preserve, and it's not going to extract in quite the way that alcohol would. Some of those things are actually, they're like made with the distillation process. So if you see some of these, I'm trying to remember the seed lip and things like this, yeah, they're actually distilled waters, which you can do at home, but that's a whole lot of fuss. And they're very protective about the ways that they're making these things. And I believe they're naturally made, but I don't know if they're using solvents or something. I have no idea, because they are very tight-lipped about how they're doing it. But you know, you could also, for example, use alcohol-free wine in a cocktail as well, as something to stop you doing that. Or beer even. So the question was, does butterfly pea flower impart flavor as well as colour? Not really, no, not very much, very little flavour to it, which is kind of good because you don't necessarily want it to taste of pea. And that family do tend to taste quite distinctive. So yeah, very little flavour, but a really good colour. I think because most of the cider vinegar we use is the live cider vinegar, so it's got the mother in it, whereas, and it's pretty active, whereas the red and white wine vinegars have a little bit, if you look at the bottom of Bragg's or whatever, apple cider vinegar, you'll see there's a whacking great cloudy bit at the bottom, which is what is still fermenting. So I think it's because that fermentation process continues. Yeah. Ooh. So the question here is having a lot of fresh rose hips at home and how to use those and incorporate them. I love rose hips. I would use them fresh. I in general tend to prefer to use things fresh if I've got them, because I think they have more to them at that point. Obviously, if you want to save some for later in the winter, then dry them. Rose hips are amazing. They're very high in vitamin C. When I was growing up in England, sometime after the Second World War, probably not as long as I would like, We were still given free rosehip syrup because obviously there's no citrus over there, to make sure that children have sufficient levels of vitamin C in the wintertime. And it's a really lovely flavour. So they make an amazing syrup. They make a really delicious syrup, and they are super high in vitamin C. Two things to know about them. One is, yes, I think fresh is lovely, but dried works too. In fact, if you go to Sweden and Scandinavia, they have rosehip soup, and it's basically dried powdered rosehips that they'll mix in the wintertime again to add to the vitamin C in there. So yeah, you want to, vitamin C is water soluble, so it's going to come out into your syrup. Something to be really careful about with rosehips though is, if you slice open a rosehip, inside there are very fine fibres, and in fact these used to be used as itching powder by evil children in the past, and they're extremely irritating on your throat. So you're going to want to strain that really, really well. So cook it. Yeah, so you would do that second method of preparing a syrup. So you would cook the food with enough water to cover it gently. You're going to want to mash it with a masher, potato masher or something, because even once they're soft, those berries are quite hard, if you see what I mean. But then strain like 3-4 times, and use a coffee filter, just to make sure you've got all those little irritating hairs out. If you buy rosehips dry, they typically have that done already. So that's not such a problem. Question over there. Okay, yes, thank you. So question here is, what strength of alcohol do I use? So typically alcohol is 40% alcohol, 80% proof, and you'll find that most sort of vodka, whiskey, all those kind of things, and that's what I use typically. Just straight vodka in there, straight in there. Bear in mind, if you're doing this, if say you were using a very juicy fruit, I wouldn't do this because I think it would taste good, but like fresh strawberries, they would go a bit slimy. But if you were using a very juicy fruit, you might want to use a stronger alcohol because there's a lot of water in there. The other thing you can do with this as well, actually, which I often do when I'm making tinctures, if you've got fresh leafy herbs that are very leafy and very juicy, just put them out in a basket in the sun for like half a day and wait for them to wilt. So it's always a good idea to wilt those things, because as soon as they wilt, you know they've lost a decent proportion of the water. Not all of it, but some of it. Just so you're not over diluting the alcohol, because like I said, really you want the alcohol to be 25% of the overall finished thing in order for it to preserve. Is that a question? Oh. Yeah.
The persimmons that I have done anything with persimmons.
Do you know, I've got a pile of persimmons on my counter that I was looking at only yesterday, and what I did with them was chop them up and freeze them so I can then whiz them up to make a kind of quick and easy dessert. I haven't done a lot with persimmons. They're very delicious dried as well, but because they're so yeah, exactly, they're very slimy, and until they're ripe, they're very kind of acrid, and you know they've got that kind of look to them. Yeah, exactly. So I haven't done a lot, but you know it's worth a little bit of vodka to give it a go. I mean, if you chop them fairly finely and put them in some vodka with some cinnamon and stuff, I think it might be really nice. Yeah. If I did that, I might not trust that it was going to preserve. I might keep it in the fridge, because it would almost be more like a, you know, like you get fruit juices and you get nectars. It would be almost more of a nectar than a alcohol infusion, if you see what I mean. Exactly. Just saying here. Yeah, just saying here that it might be a nice thing in a hot toddy. It would also, you know, dry them and use them as a garnish. They're really pretty. Yeah. 2 more questions. I think we need the first. Oh, question. What would I do with pomegranates? Shout at them when I can't get all the seeds out, and all those things online where you just go woof 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 and then they all fall out. Does not work for me. But once I've finished being cross with them. I would probably juice them and then use that and then heat that juice and make a simple syrup. So, I mean, you could put all the seeds in, but then you'd have to strain it. Obviously, it might be easier in that case just to, because they are quite seedy, just to juice them first, and then reduce that down, add an equal volume of sugar, and you're going to have a really nice pomegranate syrup. Beautiful. I have one question here, and then yeah. Question about making infusions with chili peppers and whether to remove the seeds first or not. It totally depends how hot you want it. You know, same with cooking. If you don't want it to be like, whoa, knock your head off, you take the seeds out. If you want something more kind of Tabasco-y, then yeah, you would leave the seeds in. So, and obviously that would depend on how hot your chilies are too. But yeah, you're asking more about spice level or acidity. So it's saying that I'm just repeating this for the people on Zoom so they can hear. And I'm just going to mention to Kiara that this is the laptop's running out of battery. So jalapeno infusion, was that an alcohol infusion? It was. Tasting more, not really tasting hot. Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, capsaicin, which is the active, what gives it the heat, is more oil soluble than water soluble. So probably you'd probably want to use a stronger alcohol for chili peppers actually to draw out more of that, or you know, heat in some way. But obviously you don't want to heat alcohol because it tends to catch fire if you warm it. But you could, for example, put them into a slow cooker. Don't quote me on this, but you could, I guess, potentially put them in a slow cooker. There's another way of doing it too. Denise, you have a question. So Denise there was just saying that she has a pomegranate tree that drops pomegranates all the time, and I'm envious. And how she juices them is just using a citrus press. And that's a really good way to do it, actually. And citrus presses are really useful things. I actually use one when I'm squeezing out tinctures as well. So you've got it in the nutmeg bag or whatever. Obviously, again, if you want to really keep the pure color, you may not do that so much, but it's a good way to kind of squeeze out all the alcohol or the sugar syrup out of your fruit, but that works really well. Another question, yeah.
Yeah, that's a reference to the ingredient, and it's so I knew a guy who worked with John staff for some years, and the money collaborators prided themselves on their historical research series that they did, the modern research to craft their characters. And one really good way, John Cleese is a French author. That was a historical indoor guys who hurl insults. And one of his insults was, your mother was a hamster and father smelled of elderberries. And so I've never really been, I've always thought elderberries were stinky, maybe not very good thing. You mentioned
so gentleman here's just Zoom people referencing Monty Python and the Holy Grail and John Cleese talking, being a Frenchman and giving an Englishman an insult of your mother smells like your mother's a hamster and your father smells like elderberries, right? Yeah, fabulous quote. And thinking that maybe that meant that elderberries were not a good smell. Actually, they smell great. I think they were just being very silly.
is it the berry or the flower? We have it.
Okay. Yeah, good question here about do you use the elderberry or flower? You must have water behind your house. Yeah, because the elder loves its feet in water. and it does not love the climate here unless it's got some can. Well, the first thing you do is invite me over to harvest, obviously, because it won't grow in my garden. But the second thing is the answer is both. So elderflower are gorgeous. And I've realized, I think somewhere in here there's a list of herbs and plants that you can use. I think it's further on down, and you'll find that on your handout. But so elderflower are this incredible, fragrant, beautiful, I love the smell of elderflower. And elderflower cordial, or elderflower infused syrup is a very popular thing in Europe and the UK. So you can definitely harvest the elderflowers, and then come into late summer, you can harvest the elderberries as well. And so it's kind of a trade-off. Like if you take too much of the elderflower, you're not going to get so many of the berries. And they're both medicinal as well. You know, elderflower, interestingly, elderflower, which comes in the spring, is really helpful for seasonal allergies, but also come in the spring. And elderberry, which comes in the fall, is really helpful for excuse me, really helpful for those winter colds and flus. It's an antiviral. So both are good. What I would say about elderberry is cook it. So in some people, elderberry can cause a little bit of stomach discomfort if it's not cooked. And honestly, I didn't cook it for years and years and years until someone showed me some research on this, and I was like, oh, okay. So now I cook it. So if I'm making a tincture, I'd popped it, and I would do it in that second method. So I wouldn't just put the elderberries in with vodka, for example. I would cook them first, or make a syrup where you're cooking the berries down first. Yes, question over there. So question about experimenting with plants that grow around here. I do experiment with plants around here, and I run herb walks sometimes as well. So the native plants, you said manzanita berries, and what was the other one? Toyo. Where? Toyon. I don't know that. I probably do, but is that like the lemonade? No. It's a native shrub. Okay. And it's edible? You wouldn't. Okay. I don't know what do you know the time? Oh, we're going to look it up. But manzanita berries, for sure, they're delicious. Yeah, lovely. Really nice. Yeah, and elderberries. Sometimes you find hawthorn trees growing around here. So yeah, I love to use wild. If you're wild harvesting, A, make sure you know exactly what you're harvesting. B, make sure you have permission to do it. And C, even if you're in a permission situation, particularly with berries, you're sharing that with the birds and all the other wildlife. So I just try not to take too much, I would say. I can just always be respectful of the environment and not taking too much. But yeah, there's lots of fun things that you can harvest locally, actually. Yeah. Oh, Denise has done the research for us. Okay, so the answer on Toyon is that they're edible when they're ripe, but they are not edible when they're unripe because they contain cyanide and will be used in bed. So, that probably cyanide is typipally found in the seed. So, it's possible that if you sifted all the seeds out, but then seeding if you do that. So, this is true, that, yeah, that's a good point. Or if you have a really bad stomach upset. Were there any other questions? Anybody else? Oh, apparently Toyon berries should also be cooked. Yeah, well, cooking does remove some of the cyanide, so I guess that makes sense. But you could probably want to avoid cyanide. There's cyanide in apple seeds, so it's not. I'm not going to be recorded saying, "Hey, cyanide." That's not a good idea. Did anyone else have any questions? I'll flick down to. Oh yes. Vanilla syrup, I would do that first because it's very aromatic. So I would do it that first method, which is to make the hot simple syrup and drop it in and allow it to cool. If it wasn't strong enough, I could also repeat that as well. gently warm it again and then drop it back in. But you know, when you buy vanilla essence or vanilla extract in the market, what you're buying is a vanilla tincture. And you do want a slightly higher alcohol for that, so that is more of a clear situation. But yeah, a lot of people will just like put the vanilla beans in a jar or a bottle with the alcohol and not take them out, just leave them in there and just keep adding more alcohol. And because you know vanilla holds so much flavor in it, so the whole beans, yeah. But you know, because the extract is effectively an alcohol infusion, there's nothing to stop you putting a few drops of that into a shrub. If you know, these vanilla beans are expensive, you can put a few drops of that into a shrub to add some vanilla, or adding it to a cocktail as it is, or whatever else. There's often like 2 or 3 different ways to get the same thing. So, did I see a question over there? Oh, yeah. So the question is, whether you split the vanilla bean or leave it whole? I would typically leave it whole, I think, but I don't make a lot of vanilla stuff. Denise does. Do you split it? She's got vanilla tincture over there. She's got everything. Yeah. It takes a long time. It does take a long time, but yeah. You know, you could, but also again, you know, if you were using a hot syrup beforehand, that will give you more of a. And the other way that that's typically done as well is that you store your vanilla bean in a jar of sugar, and then that sugar becomes infused, and then you can use that vanilla sugar in baking or in syrups or whatever else as well. That's another way to get vanilla in. Yeah. Yeah, the question here is, how would you extract the flavor of passion fruit? And I've got passion fruit growing. I would probably again kind of juice it because it's seedy again. So I would probably, I've not tried doing that in a lemon squeeze or a citrus. I don't think that would work because it's so slippy. So, and you wouldn't want to put it in a juicer because you'll get too much of the seed in there. I would probably just drop it into some simple syrup and see how much flavor you got out of. You know, it's a pretty strong flavor. Or I would just like mash up the pulp, strain it, pick out the seeds, and then add that to my cocktail as it is. Just the straightforward passion fruit. I've done that with mojitos, which not mojitos. That fruit one, I can't remember the name of the cocktail now, but I've definitely put them into cocktails, and a little bit into champagne as well, which is really quite nice. Yeah. Question over there. Thank you. I love this. It's always, they just shared that you can, if you pulse it in a blender, fresh passion fruit, just for a little bit, and then drop it through a sieve, you'll get the juice coming straight through like that, and that'll keep the seeds out. Because you don't want to break up the seeds. You just want to separate the flesh from the seeds. Any other questions? Oh, okay, from Hawaii, so as an expert on that, you'll probably laugh at my little Santa Cruz passion fruit. They're tickly. There's not a lot in there. Okay, I'm going to flip forward here a bit and just show you what else you've got. There's some books there that you might want to consider if you want to explore this further. Oh yeah, that's some of my plants that I talked about there. You know, and if you get into doing this, think about it when you're planting your garden, because there's all kinds of really cool things that you can have in your garden that are going to add wonderful flavors. And also think outside the box. You know, things like honeysuckle and chive flower. You know, are really interesting and beautiful flavors. And do think about the borage flowers as well. Actually, we need to talk a little bit about that. There's some more recipes, but I also want to talk about garnishes, which I think, so here's lots of lovely recipes for you to try. And I've lost it. Okay, somewhere in there is another one that somehow got skipped past, and that was garnishes. I really like to freeze flowers in ice cubes. I think that looks really gorgeous. Borage flowers work brilliantly with that. And in fact, borage flower in England is used as a garnish in Pim's #1 cup, which is a very popular kind of gin-based thing, which is drunk with kind of Sprite, effectively. And it's got the borage flowers have the most gorgeous kind of cucumber taste. And if you squeeze that little black bit in the middle, they pop off, really satisfying you from the hairy bit behind. And they freeze really beautifully in ice cubes, and they're really pretty. You can do this with sprigs of herbs, all kinds of things. Hot tip, if you are going to be freezing material in an ice cube, if you use boiled water, or even twice boiled water, that gets rid of the air bubbles. So you get a really nice clear ice cube, and you can see whatever's inside it. If you look at a regular ice cube, it's quite cloudy and white cloudy look to it. If you do it with boiled cold, obviously let the water, boiled water, you'll get a lovely clear, bright, beautiful ice cube. And you know, all of these things can be used for you know, beautiful garnishes as well to make it all look pretty. Yeah.
One of the ones you mentioned was chai.
Chai flower, yeah.
But not taste like
It does taste like chai, but you know, you think of that in a Bloody Mary. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're gonna yeah, there's not a lot of cocktails that go well, but you know, it's funny if you think about it. A classic martini, anything that has an onion, you know, onions are quite often used, so a little bit of onion actually is quite a nice thing. So you know, a tiny little bit of chai vodka in there as well in a martini might be really yummy. I don't know. I think we might have come to, there's no more questions online. Great. Well, I think we're coming to an end here. So I think somewhere here is you'll find on the thing, if you want to get hold of me, I'm on Instagram at Paula Grainger. And I'm on Facebook at The English Herbalist, and my website is paulagrainger.com. And you're most welcome to get in touch if you've got any questions or anything. But I think now we're going to say farewell to all the people on Zoom. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are.
you're all gonna get the slide deck and the recording.
And you're all going to get the slide deck and the recording coming through to you in the next day or so, I think, this weekend, probably beginning of next week. Probably next week. So that will all be coming through to you online. But thank you for joining us on Zoom, and the people here are going to go have some delicious food prepared by Kathy and some really beautiful libations prepared by Louise here. So thanks for joining us today, and I hope you'll come for something again soon.